Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martirano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Behavioral Corner. It's me again, hanging. How about this? This is what I do. I get to hang on a corner and meet really interesting people who we think bring loads of valuable information to us. Behavioral Corner is a podcast about everything, because that's what behavioral health is. It's everything. Everything we do, the decisions we make, choices, how all of that impacts our behavioral health emotionally, psychologically, physically. We have touched upon the issue of veterans and their needs many, many times over the years, primarily because it's an important topic, but because our partners and underwriters, Retreat Behavioral Health, are dedicated to providing treatment and help to our nation's veterans. We make particular point of talking about this stuff as we approach Veterans Day, which is, of course, in a couple of days in November, on November the 11th. We are a generation now that has been subjected to the United States at war. And that's gone. With the withdrawal from Afghanistan, we are now, after 20 some years, nowhere in large scale combat. And that is, of course, a good thing. But there is a danger, at least in my mind, that the veterans will be pushed back, their needs and their problems to a lesser status, which of course we cannot let happen. So to that end, we have a guest, and we're very honored to have him, Brigadier General Robert Dixon, United States Army, retired. I was telling General Dixon just a moment ago that I began reading his CV last night and just finished this morning. I mean, it should be provided in installments. A 34-year career in the United States military. The general has been a leader at every level. He's had an outstanding record. I will only touch upon a couple of the things that he did there. He graduated from the Armor Officer Basic Course in 1987, and then went on to serve as a tank platoon leader, A Company, 3rd Battalion, 69th Armor, 24th Infantry Division, and served as executive officer for A Company. And that included, of course, in 34 years, more than a couple of tours in the Gulf Wars, Desert Shield and Desert Storm, at one point being deployed in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. It's an outstanding record, and he has not stopped his dedication to service. Having retired, he is deeply involved in motivational speaking to business leaders and young people as a mentor. And of course, he is a strong advocate for veterans and their needs. General Dix, thanks for joining us on the corner.
You're more than welcome, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it should come as no surprise to anybody that you are the highest ranking person ever to hang on the corner with me, and I couldn't be more delighted. Let's begin with my concern that as the wars go away, concerns about veterans might also slip under the radar. Do you share that worry?
Yes, I do. And it's happened throughout the history of this great nation. After every major conflict, we've had a period of peace where it has ebbed and flowed, so to speak. As you come out of the conflict, everybody is supercharged, and as time goes by, kind of just fade into the background. And I share your concern and want to make sure that we prevent that from happening to today's generation. As you stated earlier, we've been at war for over 10 plus years, and it's been a constant conflict between Afghanistan and Iraq, which I participated in both, more so in Afghanistan than Iraq. But the support and the framework has got to be maintained so we don't lose the the visibility of these veterans, similar to what happened to the Vietnam era vet that came out, that was shunned when they came back from Vietnam, and then kind of melted into the background and kind of got lost in the VA system. And we're trying to prevent that, along with the VA and other senior leaders, both on active duty, retired, and those that are working in the department, to try to prevent that from happening with today's generation. And that homeless population that you spoke of, the majority of those individuals are Vietnam vets. But now at an alarming rate, we're seeing a lot of young people that participated in OEF and OIF in the early 2000s, right after 9/11. Now, those are the individuals that we're finding on the streets and have been displaced, come out with mental behavioral issues that's related to PTSD and to the opioid epidemic. That's one thing that we've got to educate the American population on. Combat is a young man's game, and your body goes through so much during combat that we have some of the same problems that the general American population has on the backside. When you're dealing with that pain and the operations, losing a limb, and having to take things for the pain, and those opioids that were mislabeled and mismarketing, now they're impacting that piece of the veteran population. We've got to deal with the mental out or the fallout from that episode.
It's a cruel irony of post-combat situations. You can certainly understand the public's desire to stop thinking about something as horrific as men at war, men and women at war. The irony comes in the fact that it's after a situation like that when our attention should be more focused on them, because there are more casualties involved in that. So, this is a great opportunity for us to say, okay, we're not fighting anywhere, and that's good, but there's still people who are in fact casualties of this in one form or another. You began with homelessness, and I certainly am aware, because we've done shows over the years about the problems of the Vietnam era guys and homelessness. Do we know how many former military people are actually homeless at this point?
Well, the numbers are varying because some have lost touch with the VA or lost confidence in the VA. And so, they won't plug into the system. But I'll tell you, before COVID, I was working on a project with the Georgia State Senate, and they projected a population of about 3,900 homeless vets throughout the state of Georgia. Now, come full circle past the current situation with COVID, and that population is more than double.
Wow.
Somewhere upwards around 9,000 across the state. And
that's just Georgia.
That's just Georgia. So we're working with Barnes and Sons nonprofit to provide the housing, not only for the state of Georgia, but for other states. And we want to plug into HUD and the VA to help provide that capability in the defense of these folks that need not only the homes, but they also need transitional training, and then given a second chance. Some of them need the medical and the behavioral science piece to help them deal with the PTSD.
Yeah.
Came out of combat with.
One of the things that makes it difficult to address an issue like homelessness among veterans is, as I understand it, finding them. Yes. Because this is not a group that goes looking for help. Many of them have, as you point out, some mental health issues that make it difficult for them to get help. But they're generally not coming in off the street saying, I need help. How active is like the VA and even private organizations in really hitting? You got to talk about boots on the ground, right? You've got to go out there and look for these people.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we've been advocating is the buddy wellness checks and the buddy program. We have those in the military when you're on active duty. You take care of your buddy to the left and the right, and you make sure you do constant checks to make sure their welfare is squared away as you serve. We've got to get back to the same principle, and the VA has began to touch on that, but it's going to take a combination of the VA, the states, and the private organizations coming together. And we've got to mobilize another army to get out there and identify, make contact, and then give them the opportunity and the skill sets to lift themselves up, and that's what a veteran asks for every day, not a handout, just the opportunity to make a better way and to get him and himself or herself and their family back on their feet. And that's the initiative that I'm taking in the motivational speaking, working with the Birdwell Foundation, working with Barnes and Sons and High Tech Bill to go ahead and get these homes that are affordable into local areas and the rural areas and make sure we make a true impact. And then have the transitional training for the vets so that they can change and adopt a new skill set and then have them help the next veteran in line. And it's the old train the trainer type concept from the military. And it's one buddy helping another buddy sustain.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk like with the one buddy helping another buddy. You don't have to have been in the military to be familiar from movies and television with the credo that you always hear about people in combat situations, and that is that rule one: no one's left behind. Amen. And that certainly applies to the streets of this country. So that's so important. And when you're, for myself, I mean, my whole attitude over the years has changed. When I see somebody behaving oddly, and maybe they're in worn out fatigues and those green jackets, and I used to think, well, there's another poor guy that's either high or drunk. That changes after when you understand what's going on here. That's the soldier that's been left behind and needs help. So homelessness.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but
no.
A key point is this is affecting all first responders. Firemen, police, EMTs, all of those folks that have been entrenched in defeating COVID are facing some of the same things that military veterans face when they're in combat. COVID, there's just no bullets flying, but it's the same principles. And when you equate the long hours to trauma, to high stress environments and no outlets, the first responders are having the same issues and the same problems. They turn to painkillers from, lifting heavy objects or people to get them onto a gurney and get them to the hospital. Their backs are growing out. So they turn to those painkillers and, sadly, they get hooked, just like military personnel. And we've got to create safe spaces for all of our first responders and our veterans to come into that we can say, hey, we got you, take a knee, take a deep breath. We're going to help you get back on your feet. And it's got to be a village concept where the government is leading the effort with the funding and the other infrastructure items, and then the public sector and the states, because we owe it to these individuals. We ask so much of the military and the first responders that it's a shame if we don't rise to the occasion to make it better for them.
Yeah. We got, it's been a long, long time since the draft went away. This is a volunteer army. If you expect people to continue to volunteer, you better offer them a decent deal. Otherwise, they're going to find something else to do. There's a lot of chatter, a lot of news, constant, in fact, about spending bills that the administration's trying to get passed. That's a sort of a tradition in American politics, but unless I'm not paying attention, I don't hear a lot of talk about money in there for veterans. Do you?
No, I will tell you, there was some legislation that was offered. They couldn't get it through Congress, and it's kind of taken a back seat. And that's one of the things that, you know, we vote the members of Congress into office and they owe it to us. And that's one of the things that, you know, you touched on it perfectly. You know, it's an all volunteer force across the board. In order to get quality volunteers, you've got to say, hey, we're going to take care of you from day one to when God calls you home. And inside of that window, you know, we will do everything possible to make sure that you have the opportunities and you're taken care of, and no politics comes into play when we're taking care of your force. And, you know, we ask so much of them and of us that, you know, we owe that opportunity to them. And, you know, the taxation by the states on veterans, especially disabled veterans that have been designated and they're struggling. A veteran can't afford to sit on their retirement and, you know, be taxated on the retirement and just get by on the disability. So they've got to go out and get another job and try to sustain it.
You know, when you sent me some bullet points on things you wanted to talk about, you mentioned, well, before I get to the tax break thing, it's so short-sighted. I believe that for the longest time, many people went into the military because they had fewer options. It was just, it was a smart move. I'll get a little education. Afterwards, you know, I'll serve a certain amount of time. But it wasn't like I can't wait to be in the military. It was sort of well, I'll do this. It's the best shot I have. We've got to change that to where it really is a good idea. You know, I mean, you know, unfortunately, you may put yourself in grave danger, but you got to make the trade-off worthwhile, or you're not. You're right. You're not going to get the right kind of people, and we're all going to suffer from that one. Let's talk about this idea about tax breaks, though, because I don't think I hear a lot of people talking about tax breaks for vets. How would that work?
Well, basically, you would encourage the youth to come and volunteer and join the forces, and then you would work on the backside to say, hey, if you make it a career and, you know, you have disabilities or you don't have disabilities, we're not going to tax your retirement pay. And, you know, there was a letter that was done a few years ago where it stated there was a precedent that had been set probably in the early 60s, coming out of Vietnam in the early 70s, where veterans that were 100% disabled got a tax break for 3 years on their taxable income. And for 3 years, they didn't have to pay on that taxable income. So if you had the letter and you're now a disabled veteran 100%, then you could petition the IRS. The precedent had already been set to go ahead and get that 3-year break.
Yeah.
You know, for somebody in my status, or a senior officer or a senior NCO, we've got a little bit more leverage. But, you know, when you've got seniors, or, you know, let's say an NCO that was hurt and could no longer serve, or a specialist or a private that was hurt in combat, you know, now you're talking about a different kind of pay scale adjustment that has to be made. So, you know, the taxation should be in there for everybody. If you were 100% disabled due to combat or due to service and it's service related, then we shouldn't tax your taxable income. You know, we have enough, or we have other things that we can do to make adjustments for that loss of income. You know, the state of Virginia has high taxation on all military veterans across the board that retire and live in the state of Virginia. You know, why are people flocking to Texas and Florida where they don't have a state tax? You know, when I want to live where my family is here in the state of Georgia, but Georgia has a high tax rate on all military veterans, whether you're disabled or not.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Boy, not enough has been said about that. That's outrageous. I mean, that is completely outrageous. After all, you know, we all know about taxes. Nobody likes them. but they're the price we pay for civilization. And it's not like we don't know where the money is. We know where the money is. We got to just go get it and relieve the burden on people who shouldn't be. First of all, shouldn't be bearing it. Forget about what kind of shape they're in. They shouldn't be bearing an additional burden. They serve their time. Tax breaks is a great idea. Not enough said about that. Our guest is retired Brigadier General Robert Dix. Richard. I'm sorry. He is as you can hear, a passionate advocate for both first responders and United States military. They have many needs. We're only touching upon a few of those needs here on the corner a couple of days before Veterans Day. Let's discuss another horrible aftermath, in both cases, first responders and vets, and that is suicide and suicide prevention. What is being done there to help people avoid that?
Well, I'll tell you, the VA is making an all-out effort, and that effort is starting to pay off because we're seeing a slight decrease in suicide across the military population. I'll tell you, people like Behavioral Retreat and the Birdwell Foundation, the two private organizations, are doing a great job of reaching out and creating safe spaces. I speak around the country, and I recently did 2 sessions for the Centers of Disease Control here in Atlanta, and it was fascinating to know that the CDC has a suicide issue. They have an issue that's related to PTSD in the workplace. They have a lot of veterans that serve in their population. So some of that is bleeding over into the CDC. But, those 2 sessions were well received. We talked about a great book, Peaks and Valleys, that I would suggest for any of your listeners to get a copy of. And if they want to reach out and they want to have conversations about peaks and valleys and start discussing how you view what you're going through and how that helps you relate to a current situation that can help you just shift just a little bit. If you were thinking about suicide, now we can have a different conversation, and I can show you based off of the principles of that book from Spencer Johnson that says, hey, if I look at it this way, maybe it's not as bad as I thought it was. Let me start looking at it. And, that's the principles of the book. And I've woven that into all of my conversations, whether it's on suicide, PTSD, or whether it's students that we're talking about leadership and the 5-year plan and how to put that into motion to help young folks stay focused and have a plan to get them from point A to point B. And generation, Steve, is critical because you got to talk to the person and they got to feel good about what they're doing. They're not motivated by money, status, a big house, a nice car. They want to feel that they made an impact and they made a difference. And that's what this generation is dealing with. And the senior leaders that are above me and the folks that are our age, we got to shift our thought process to be able to plug in to the millennials and to meet them where they live and understand how they operate, because they're the future of this country or of the world for that matter.
General, I've never had the opportunity to suggest something to a retired general, but you speak with your hands, so there must be some Italian in your family. And when you do, we can't see your face. So that's all I'm just saying. Let me ask you. This just occurs to me hearing you talk about young people and the need to motivate them. Why don't we have, or do you support the idea of universal service? Everybody reaches an age where they have 2 years. Doesn't have to be active military, but it can. Do we need that? We need that law, don't we?
Yes, and I would fully support that. There are countless senior leaders that I know that would support that. And to the parents, what I would say to them because that's where a lot of the drawback will come from, is that there are many jobs and skill sets throughout the military service that don't include kicking in doors and blowing up screens. We've got everything from nuclear scientists that are on cutting edge of, the latest technology trends, cyberspace defense, a gambit of things that don't involve going to combat. And a 2-year service would expose our young people and get them energized. But more importantly, it will allow the country to leverage the greatest asset that we have, our young people.
Yep.
And so, if we could get that through Congress and get young people serving a mandatory 2-year period, I think the country and the world would be a greater place.
I mean, it is so self-evidently a good idea, because we're listen, in all candor here. Um, we're not talking about kind of remedial education where they teach you to march, in snappy in a snappy fashion, or how to take your rifle apart, put it back together again, or how to climb over a obstacle course. We're talking about world class instructors, cutting edge education, and it's free. A couple of years of service. It's crazy not to utilize that. So, and I have grandchildren, and no one wants to see anybody's children have to go fight anywhere. But again, universal service is not just, as you say, kicking in doors and blowing stuff up. Um, Finally, let me ask you this, and then we'll let you go whenever you're busy. What was the impact in terms of preparedness to our military forces because of COVID? Were we in trouble?
No, the military gets get on active duty and in the reserves and National Guard. They get access to premier first class medical care. And when things like a worldwide pandemic hit, we've got things that are in place inside of our standard operating procedures that protect the force. You saw some impact, but I'll tell you, Steve, when you got a young person that's in peak performance and peak health, and they engage something like this, they may have some minor impacts like flu-like symptoms. But if you serve, you take the inoculations. I took so many shots over the course of my career, including the mandatory flu shot, that I know that the greatest force that the world has ever seen is in good hands, and they are able to respond on a moment's notice anywhere in the world. And just look at the Chinese and the provocative steps that they've taken, and understand that the U.S. and our allies were right there in lockstep, saying, "Hey, I wouldn't do that if I was you." And here's why. It's called the U.S. Pacific Fleet, and the capability to strike anywhere throughout the Pacific is real, and it's a current and present danger. And the Chinese kind of stood right down, and they understand that the U.S. military is a formidable foe, but more importantly, they understand the resolve of the American people, and that's what's going to get us through COVID. We've got to stop the politicalization of this. We've got to come together as a country, because great empires have fallen throughout history when there's a fracture or a divide in the populace. And once that fracture is there, they cease to no longer exist.
Yeah, it should have been, along with many other things, a object lesson for people who are hesitant or anti-vaccination to notice that the organizations you just described, the United States Navy, Marine Corps, and Army and Air Force, there was no discussion about who's going to get it, who doesn't want to get it. Everybody's going to get it. Everybody's going to get this inoculation, and that's the end of that. You certainly would think, given what's at stake, the military and the civilian leaders, wouldn't subject the fighting force to something dangerous if they didn't think it was absolutely necessary. But of course, these are hard lessons for us to learn. General, thanks so much for your time, Robert Dix, and we'd love to have you back many, many times going forward over the course of your continued work. As I said, we're going to post the program, I guess, on the 9th of this month of November, and Veterans Day is the 11th. Veterans Day is sort of the day where we see bunting, political speeches, and a lot of people saying thanks for your service. Can you leave us with some of the other things they ought to be doing and saying going forward, so our veterans know they're not alone?
Yes. The one thing that I like to leave with the American public is adopt the motto, one team, one fight, just like everybody who's ever served this country has done. Through the times of segregation, through the times where you've got one unified force, no matter what, whenever this country was threatened, we came together as a population to defend this country. And if the U.S. military is a direct reflection of the American public needs to take a page out of our book and become a direct reflection of the United States military and adopt the one team, one fight motto. And more importantly, you've got to come together to stop the forces that want to tear this country apart and want to see this country dissolve into nothing, so they can sow chaos around the world. And for those parents that would like some help with motivational speaking or some products that are out there free of charge, please go to dixpublicspeaking.com and download the 5-year plan for your students. And if anyone reaches out, I have no problem with mentoring those students to help them develop their 5-year plan and to get them to where they want to go.
General, we will have links to both your site and the Birdwell Foundation, which we talked about a lot here on the program, so that people can have access to the information we've just touched upon lightly. Retired Brigadier General Dix, thanks so much. Appreciate your time and your work and your insight into this big problem. Let's do something about this stuff. Thanks so much, General.
Hey, thanks for having me on the corner. I'd like to hang out with you again.
Terrific. Thank you all for hanging as well. Look for us, wherever you're finding those podcasts. We appreciate hearing back from you. Like us on Facebook. Follow us all there as well. Next time, later.
At Retreat Behavioral Health, we believe in the power of connection and quality care. We offer comprehensive, holistic, and compassionate treatment from industry-leading experts. Call 855-802-6600 and begin your journey today.
That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.